Okay, so you look like you're a little jacked up.
Oh, no, we're live. Okay. Is it actually live, though? People, tell us if we're live. Can you see us?
On the YouTube, right, it doesn't. So.
Oh, there we go. We are live. Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Stick of Joseph live stream, coming all the way from Okinawa, right there. Oh, I got it. There we go. So we are in Okinawa, and we wish that we were doing our live event as we have done with our other books, but you know, circumstances have changed. But we're going to be coming back. We got like 50 days left until we're back, and we're excited. But tonight we are going to be celebrating Jonah Barnes's release, or Plain and Precious Publishing's release of Jonah Barnes's book, The Lost Gems of Genesis.
Like I said the other day in our video, he killed it. It could have been a fluke with the Key of the Keystone, but we figured out that the R in Jonah R. Barnes stands for really good at writing books. And so we decided to publish his second one, and it's phenomenal. So we're super excited to have a discussion about it. We've got a great panel for you. And for this first little bit, we're just going to have some fun, ask some questions to our guests. And
yeah, you guys submitted, we got like 60 or something questions submitted. We fielded some of them. And we're going to just have a conversation with our whole panel. So let's start introducing the panel. First off, the first guy we're going to introduce is the editor-in-chief of Plain and Precious Publishing. You guys know him, David Butler. So we originally, Dave, what's up? How you doing?
He's that video quality. Phenomenal.
He's coming from a car right now.
I'm not actually driving, if you're wondering. I'm in the shotgun.
He's got both of his nasty feet on them.
That's good. So we got Dave. Now, real quick, I'm going to show you a picture. We were going to do this thing where we show everybody, or where we ask ChatGPT, we put in everybody's credentials of who they were, what their personality types were like. We had it look through like everything on the internet about them, and to generate the most likely biblical character for them. And this is not it. This is the temple version. This right here is what ChatGPT generated for David Butler.
We didn't even tell it what it looked like, give it a reference picture. We just gave your attributes, your non-physical attributes, and then this is what it popped up.
This is what it popped up, Brando, if you want to throw that up on the screen here, if we got it. He's working it right now.
Maybe it was the recursive, what do you call them? Tabs after all.
I think it's Goliath of Gath meets an angry biker.
Actually, it's right here. Oh, come on, Brando. You got it, man. Hey, give it up for Brandon Russin, who has been running the Stick of Joseph while we've been gone for this last year. He's amazing. And right now he is doing the first live stream that he's done.
Can y'all not see this? And clearly it is my first live stream. Yeah.
No, we cannot see it.
We cannot.
I'm just sitting here crushing on Dave Butler.
We just got Dave Butler right here.
Many do.
We're not seeing the presentation.
Man, I'm sorry, guys. It's not.
Hey, it's all right. We'll pop it up later. As you get it figured out. We'll get everyone on screen here. Next, we're going to show Jonah Barnes, the author of The Lost Gems of Genesis. Welcome, my friend. How you doing? Where are you calling from? Secret lair?
Secret lair, 150 feet underground, behind 2 feet of reinforced concrete from my commune under Independence, Missouri.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, Jonah, I had the privilege of finding your personal YouTube channel the other day, and I watched a video from 4 years ago called How Anti-Mormons Do a Puzzle. And bro,
there we go. Okay, here's Dave right here. So based on your attributes,
wow.
You are King Josiah. And this is you smashing the Nehushtan. Khan. So after it randomly decided that you were most like King Josiah, we were like, maybe we should stop doing this and not do it for everyone else.
Very, very King Josiah.
Dude.
I look decisive.
Yeah, you do. You look very decisive.
A little
strong.
confused, maybe.
Yep, there we go. So there's David Butler as King Josiah smashing the Nehushtan. If you want to learn more about that, you can get his book.
It's probably Hezekiah.
So awesome. Okay, we'll move on. Next on the list, we have we'll do Cardon Ellis from Ward Radio.
Uh-oh. What's going on, man?
With the epic War in Heaven veteran hat.
Yeah.
I know I should have brought mine out here and worn it around. I probably would have got yelled at by a master sergeant or something like that. But that is epic. How you doing, man?
I'm well. How you doing?
Dude,
You're looking good. I aspire only to your greatness, dude. You look like you just jumped out of American Ninja Warrior.
Yeah, we've been in the sun a lot. So
we're having a good.
Awesome. Next, we got Andrea Woodmansee, a stick of Joseph right here. Her video, the Hebrew wedding feast, I think is almost at 350,000 views. So she is
crazy
online. So that's awesome. And look at her new setup. It's beautiful.
Looks great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay,
yeah, we got some good things coming.
Next, we have the official spokesperson of Going Through Travel, Mr. Greg Matsen from Quick Media.
How we doing, guys? Happy to be here. I was the last one invited, but I've got the most to say.
Yeah.
Well, we had a cancellation at the last minute. We had to fill the slot.
And I was very happy to hear that.
Yeah. Talk about looking good and chiseled. That cardio miracle is doing wonders on you, bro.
I was thinking the same thing. Look at that product placement.
It's freaking awesome.
I'm challenging you guys to a push-up contest.
Let's do it when we're together. Push-ups, pull-ups,
you'll probably beat us. Okay, next we got on the lineup the person who wrote the foreword to Jonah's book, Dr. Michael Day.
What's up, guys? I'm still trying to find the Paul brothers. I think I'm talking to Hangman and Maverick or something. I'm not sure who I'm talking to here.
Iceman, and Goose. Iceman and Goose.
I feel like I'm in a Top Gun movie, just like hanging out with you guys. You're all tan and buff.
Yeah, well, Mike has he's officially a doctor. He got his PhD, and he's wearing a Utah hat, which he got some flack on our most recent video from all the BYU nerds.
Unsubscribe.
I'm a Utah fan too, so good job.
You know what? I love all Utah schools. I actually did my undergrad at Weber State, which is red and blue combined.
Oh, okay, purple. There we
go.
Go Wildcats.
And I volunteer regularly. What?
Okay, next.
Our last guest to introduce is a new up-and-coming polarizing figure online. Some hate him, and some hate him profusely.
A lot.
His name is Cade Alvey. Cade, welcome, brother.
Just kidding. No one hates him, but all those in favor is doing awesome things. They're killing it on Instagram, on YouTube. We reached out to Tony Finau's wife via Instagram like a year ago and just left on red, bro. And you guys interviewed Tony Finau
because you made a sick video and it was awesome, bro. Awesome.
Well, I mean, at least I think at least some people hate me here because I think everyone was invited on this Go and Do cruise except for me. So,
hey, you get on the next one.
The last two people that we have to introduce here tonight are actually Goose and Iceman.
Goose and Iceman right there.
Who are hosting from Okinawa, Japan. They have come to.
You can believe it. The biggest
here.
difference between us and them is we didn't go to college. They got to be officers because they went and got a degree. So I'm still working on my gender studies degree.
That's cheating. Yeah.
And we've just been doing notional warfare our whole careers. We've just been practicing. Yeah. They do the real stuff. Yeah. So cool. All right. Well, glad everyone's here. Brandon, if you want to just throw the whole panel up now. So pumped to have everyone here. So let's just start going through the questions that have been asked. So we'll start off with actually one of my favorites. If you want to pull up 13, Brandon. This one was actually to Jonah Barnes, but it's really to Cardon Ellis, I guess, because we have to get his permission on it.
Should I lean so the Stick of Joseph logo, like,
yeah,
point to the sponsorship, like, yeah, right there. Because if I said normally, right
Brandon,
there.
That you can actually hide the logo. So it's not up there.
Guys, we could all start singing. This is a story of a lovely lady. Everybody, right? No,
Cardon, that's the best you've ever looked.
So number 13, Brando, for Jonah says new book idea, a quote book for Cardon. I'm thinking something like Pure Wisdom, probably a Cardon Ellis quote book. Thoughts? What do you guys think about that?
You need several volumes.
Yeah,
There's going to be a lot of quotes when I finally lay pen to paper and finish the top 10 commandments of anti-Mormons, the top 30 rules of anti-Mormons. That's in the works. So I'll put some quotes on that one.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I think this would be a good like toilet reading, you know, and we'd probably do like an explicit and a non-explicit version is what I'm
There's also going to be a hot Mormon men calendar featuring Hayden and Jackson Paul and Greg Matsen in a stick of Joseph Speedo that we're going to be selling and promoting.
There we go. That'd be awesome. Okay. All right. Let's go. First question. This one's a good one. We'll throw this one to Greg Matsen first. All right. And this was one where I read it and I was like, I actually want to hear what everyone has to say. So we'll have Greg answer first, but this will be towards everybody. Anyone can answer. So this is from, I actually don't know who this is from. We'll find out later, but it says many members nowadays, this is number 2, Brandon, so you can pull it up. Many members nowadays argue that only the words of the living modern prophet are canon. For example, we've had prophets who have warned against second piercings and food storage, tattoos, etc. But since President Nelson hasn't mentioned them, the Lord no longer cares about these trivial matters. Is this accurate? How would you respond to someone who believes this? What are your thoughts on that? I feel like that's a really good question, is like, how do we weigh the words of previous prophets with current prophets? If a current prophet doesn't mention something, do we hold on to what previous prophets have said? Greg Matsen, you kick us out.
This is the Gospel by Greg answer, definitely. But it's, I just did an interview with BYU professor Trevin Hatch in the Stick of Joseph studios. And this was the exact subject. And we went all the way through things like word of wisdom and other topics and took a look at, well, you've got past prophets, you've got current prophets, and then you've got the scriptures. And so it's very difficult to look at because you've got quotes from prophets saying things like, and I'm paraphrasing, saying things like, well, if a prophet says something and it's not aligned with the scriptures, then it's your duty not to follow it, from a prophet, right? And then you've got others that say that more recently, in fact, that you've got a prophet that will say, well, your current prophets take precedent over everything. And so it's very difficult to follow it because you could pull quotes from prophets all the way back and you're going to get both sides on this. You're going to get both sides on it. For me, I'll just tell you how I treat this. I go to the scriptures first. I always go to the scriptures. And because there is a large amount of examples from prophets that have written on things and they're written for our day. So that's what I go to first. And then I want to see, okay, well, how do I square this up with the scriptures? I don't think there's an official answer to this. I think it's been placed all over the place from several different prophets. So and that's even goes with official positions like on evolution and other things like that. So horrible answer, but it's the only answer I've got.
Good answer. I like that. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Open it up to the group. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this question to add?
The guy below the logo does.
Yeah. Hey, logo's gone now.
Actually, Greg, I think on your tour, I got one of the best answers for that ever. First off, Jacob Hansen's collective witness model, I think, is a phenomenal approach to how we contextualize prophetic guidance and measure it against scripture. And I won't regurgitate it here. I'll just encourage you to go look up the videos that have been done on it. But also Bruce Porter on the Gospel on the Nile travel by Go and Do Travel. I was speaking with him, and when he did a big research project where he had to talk about kind of deep doctrine that was forgotten in the vaults of the church office building and the church history center and library. Remember what they told him was the criteria for understanding not canon, but like what could be taken seriously? Do you remember, Greg, his criteria? Because I do.
I thought it was focused on the scriptures first, but
no. They said anything the prophet Joseph Smith said, anything that a prophet said while he was prophet, and anything in the canonized scripture was the rubric that he had to use when he was researching on behalf of the church, trying to figure out this aspect of deep doctrine. And so that kind of has always stuck with me. What the prophet Joseph Smith said, who we indeed know was a prophet, what this canonized scriptures say, or what a modern prophet has said while he was prophet. And they made that specific stipulation, which I thought was really interesting. And that's coming from the church. That's not coming from us or a YouTuber or a progmo or an overzealous frogmo. That's straight up the church's criteria. So I've always taken that with me whenever I try and kind of apply my own personal collective witness model.
Wait, is the frogmo a French Mormon? Is that?
Yeah.
Frogmo?
No, you've never heard the term frogmo?
No, but it's not Frenchman. Am I misunderstanding?
No, it's like, Pepe the Frog is the big conservative icon. So just like progmos are a little bit crazy over here on Mormonism, there's frogmos, which are like right wing.
Is that the same thing as Desnat?
So it's like Pepe the Frog.
There's all manner of ites. But
but Desnat has fallen out of favor and the hashtag has been all but abandoned.
I feel like I wouldn't want to be referred to as frogs.
Yeah, it's frogmos, bro. It's a real thing.
Okay, all right.
There's progmos and frogmos, dude.
Well, that's some interesting thoughts. Does anyone else have anything to say on that?
I think
I want to add one little thing. I was going to say the gospel is complicated, and we all ate the fruit, and we're here to learn through experience and struggle. And anybody who offers you a simple answer and says, "Oh, you just read this book and it'll tell you everything to do. You just listen to this one person and do anything he says." I think that's a cheap way. And the Lord instead has said, "I've given you your brain. I've given you your heart. I've given you the scriptures. I've given you a living prophet. I've given you apostles, and I've given you all this." And, it's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. So use it all. I think the collective witness model by Jacob Hansen is fantastic. And we're supposed to learn through hard experience. And so beware of snake oil salesmen who say, "Oh, it's so easy. You just have to follow this." That's what got the Deuteronomists in trouble. That's what got the apostatizing Greeks in trouble. That's what gets people in trouble, is they say, "Oh, if we could just all put it into one book, we wouldn't have to think. We wouldn't have to think anymore." So beware.
No, that's good. Awesome. Thanks for answering that. The next question we got is for Andrea. And it's a hard one. I'm not gonna lie. This one was a doozy. Did you read it beforehand?
I did. It's a great question.
It's a hard question, but
it's really good.
Miss Rebecca says, in the initiatory ordinance, why are the women forgiven immediately, but the men will be forgiven only after through their faithfulness?
Yeah, such a good question. And I've heard so many women kind of wrestle with this before. And I'll admit, I feel a little bit like Moses here, like I got to take off my shoes, treading on some sacred ground. And it's a fair question, but I want us to really think about it a little deeply. Next time you go do initiatories, especially for the women, listen really carefully, because there are some words in there that are kind of qualifiers. There's some caveats in there, and it might not be as explicit as maybe what the men have in their experience, but it's not absolute. So this idea that, we go through the initiatory and we're just forgiven, and now we just have free reign to go engage in all sorts of debauchery, I think is a little misguided. So it's not absolute forgiveness. I think it's much more akin to what we experience in the sacrament each Sunday, where if you come into the sacrament with a broken heart, contrite spirit, you're in the right frame of mind, you're repentant, you're worshipful, and you're there to recommit to the Savior Jesus Christ, then it's effective in your life. Then there's a cleansing that comes to you. Same thing with going through the initiatory. If you're coming to it in the right spirit, the right frame of mind, then there is a spiritual cleansing that can occur. But these aren't magical incantations or something that just magically absolve you of everything. and I think that especially for women, we tend to be really hard on ourselves. We're pretty self-critical. So the initiatory can be really reassuring that if you're there and your heart's in the right place and you're doing your best to do the right thing, that should be a lot of reassurance that you're pointed in the right direction. Just keep going. But remember also the word initiatory is initial. It's the beginning. It's preparatory. So it's not the final say. It's really just to prepare us to become the kind of people who can ultimately enter the presence of the Lord. That's the goal, right? And I'd really encourage you, if you want to study this further, go watch. You can pull it up on YouTube right after you're done watching Stick of Joseph videos. Go pull it up on YouTube. You can watch the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. It's fascinating. And you'll see a lot of ties to the temple ceremony. And I think there's a reason for that, because the British claim that their coronation rites draw from ancient temple rites. So you'll see some parallels there. If you watch the video, you'll see her come in and she strips off her outer gown that she came in wearing. It's very symbolic of letting go of the worldly person and becoming a new person. She goes behind a veil where she's washed and anointed, and then given a robe of glory, and makes promises to be the Queen of England. It's really interesting, and I think it can give you some insight into what the initiatory is really all about, and that it's not just absolving women of bad decisions, but that it's pointing us in the direction that we should be going. I hope that's helpful.
No, that's good. That's good. Before I'll share a couple, just my 2 cents real quick. I think one thing to remember with all of these is that the ordinances themselves are echoes of it. This is how I look at it. The ordinances themselves are echoes of things that should be happening in real life. Like they're pointing us towards something, preparing us for something. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I think a lot of times people have talked about, for example, like the second anointing and the second endowment and all that sort of stuff. And they're like, look, if you make it to here, then you're automatically going to be a celestial being or whatever. And it's like, no, all of these ordinances are echoes of something that should be happening. They aren't the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think just, having someone say, okay, you're clean, you're good to go. Well, that's the same thing we say when we're baptized or when we partake of the sacrament. And it's not a one and done. It's not a complete absolution. It's a step, it's a progress, and something, it's pointing us in the direction we should go. So
that's awesome. Perfect. Cool. All right. Before we ask the next question, we just want to let everybody know. So we're doing this live stream to celebrate the release of Bort Finkelstein's second book, The Lost Gems of Genesis. And if you haven't got the book yet and you want to get the book, go to plainandpreciouspublishing.com and you can use code livestream and you're going to get 10% off for the next 24 hours. So if you want to get that book, I highly recommend it. For those of you who have got it, just so there's full disclosure here, Lucifer heard about what Jonah was writing in this book about him, and it's not good, obviously. And he tried to literally derail a train to get these books to not get to us. And so they're going to hopefully be shipping on Tuesday this next week because there was a train that derailed. So
he's not just buying up armies and navies.
Train
tracks as well.
Okay, cool. Well, all right. Let's
Hayden, can I add on to that question?
Yes, of course.
A couple of things on that. I think when you do go through the initiatory also, I think it's important to see that when you talk of kings and queens and priests and priestesses, I'm just going to say that, you are launching yourself at that point onto a royal procession. That's what you're going to be doing. And that's why it's mentioned that way. And so you're going to go through the same thing that Jesus went through in the last week of his life. When he comes in through the east gate on a donkey, that is him coming in ritually as the king. And he's anointed before that, right? He gets anointed before he gets that. So he's doing this. You're essentially in the endowment and through the initiatory as kind of the initial start of this. You're going through the last week of Jesus's life. And that's why they're going to mention king and queen and priest and priestess. The other thing is the kings and queens and priests and priestesses have different roles. And so why are they not forgiven? I think what you really need to look at is the king's role. And in the rituals, in the temple dramas, the Day of Atonement, all of these things that you would get probably near annually in ancient Israelite history, you have the king. Go to Leviticus, what is it, 16 or 17, the Day of Atonement. Go to Mosiah 2, I think it is, with King Benjamin. They're going to talk about what they have to do to rid their garments of the blood of the generation. Right? That is what is happening in there. There is a job for the men to do where they are responsible for that blood of their generation as a priest and as a king. And so unless they do that, they don't have the same blessing. That is because they have to fulfill that role. Just my 2 cents on that.
I think that's really that is really interesting, because the role the king is responsible for the welfare, for what happens in his kingdom, right? And so when you as a priesthood holder, you are responsible for those in your under your stewardship. So that's really cool. I hadn't thought about it that way. Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. This one's for Cardon Ellis. So this is number 6.
All right,
you can pull it up. So this is a good one. It says, independent pro-LDS media has grown substantially over the last 3 years. And I would say, a lot because of awesome stuff Word Radio has done. What do you think LDS creators are doing well in the fight? In what ways do you think creators need to improve?
What are they doing well? And then in what ways do they need to improve? Okay, so the first knee-jerk response that comes to my mind is, what are they doing well? Well, they're doing it. The biggest problem that existed when me, Kwaku, and Brad formed Midnight Mormons way back in the day and started our collaborations and This Is the Show and Fair Mormon and all of that, was there just was not a lot of independent media, so much so that there was actually a knee-jerk reaction against us that if it was independent, it had to be anti-Mormon. There was this automatic insinuation and association in people's minds that if media was good, the church would do it. Therefore, if the church wasn't doing it and it was independent, that was synonymous with anti-Mormon, because anti-Mormons had gotten a 5, 6, 7 year head start on YouTube. And we were kind of the tip of the spear of faithful pro LDS commentary, right? So the first thing that they're doing well is they're just doing it. I'd like to see some improvements on production quality, comedic timing, all that other stuff. And because of that, I gladly collaborate with anybody that I can.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing I see. Then what was the second question? Can you put it back up again, bro? The second question.
It was just what do you think we as creators need to do to improve, take it to the fight more?
Don't slip back into niceness culture. Don't be afraid to speak truth. When in doubt, just do it. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. And take me out to lunch and ask me whatever questions you want as many times as you can. That's it. That's all I got.
Dude, I will say the enemy, the whole don't be perfect, just get it done good. You know what I mean? Whatever. You said it way better. I mean, if you watch the first episode on the Stick of Joseph and what that looked like, and then we were in my parents' janky basement with a stained carpet in the back.
And with 5-minute videos, it would take Hayden and I probably over an hour to do it.
Because we just kept messing up and we had to get it perfect, right? But you just improve little over time. Cade, real quick before we ask you your question, and anyone else can share as well, but I want to ask Cade, because you're kind of one of the newest to the fight. What inspired you to start? You're kind of one of the newer creators on here.
So I feel like it was a lot of things. Just the way people talked about the church online was not what I was reading in books and studying at school. And I feel like there was a big gap between the way critics talk and the way we can hopefully present ourselves. So me and Baylor both started just in hopes of bridging that gap and hopefully offering a faithful perspective on things from hopefully from a more approachable and accessible perspective than maybe some of those more academic or scholarly books, podcasts, and publications.
Yeah, I'm always pumped when I am looking through the algorithm and I see some video incorrectly displaying one of our beliefs, and then I see who's in the comments, and it shows all those in favor, like the first one, and your first comment has like 80 comments under it. You're always just rage baiting people. But hey,
does anyone else have any thoughts on this question?
Okay, I'm gonna chime in again.
Yeah,
real quick. You know, in 2019, speaking of fair, and I think it was 2019. I think it was Elder Anderson. He was the first 70 to ever show up at one of these conferences. And there was a Q&A afterward. They were doing Q&A back then too. And in the Q&A, he said something really important. He said there was a question about what can be done to help support the church. And this was all about online voices. And he said, you know, there are so many things that the church cannot do or even say on their own. And we need faithful members of the church to fill that void where the church can't really go. And so that's what we're looking for. And then he talked about organizations like FAIR and others. And then he said, and also independent individuals and YouTubers and podcasters need to be a part of this, because we can only do so much here, a little more mainstream, so to speak. But as far as building that gap, that bridge to other audiences to approach this in a different manner, he was saying, look, we need as much help as we can get.
Yeah. No. I will say, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will just say, though, back to your perfectionism, that is a really big issue, because content creators, well, on my channel, I have a channel called Talking Scripture, where we go through each week's Come Follow Me. And when you're talking about Scripture, you know, because of my feelings towards Scripture, I revere it. I want to treat it right. I want to make sure what I'm saying is right. We edit our stuff so that, you know, when I'm messing up or something, we want to make it good. We want to make it something that people will listen to again and again. And that's a lot of work. And so I think there's this balance between what you're saying, where you're like, just go raw, uncut, who cares if you mess up? But then at the same time, there's a danger, because, you know, misinformation can get out there, or maybe somebody's just going off the rails. They're not citing their sources. So for me, I'm like citing everything, but then that takes hours. So for like a 1 hour episode, I might spend 10 to 20 hours just getting my sources in order and putting all that. And so it's just incredibly difficult. And I know for a fact, as being a guest on Stick of Joseph, I prepare, like I do a lot of work for this. And so not everybody has the luxury of, you know, having a job where they get to do this all the time. Like most people have to get up in the morning and go to work, and we have very limited time in the week. And so, I mean, you guys are doing amazing things, because you're out there working real jobs, and then you're doing this on the side. It's like, how do you ever fit it in? And I mean, it's just so challenging. And then at the same time, there's 19 different people throwing 19 accusations at you daily, coming at you, throwing stuff on X. It's endless. And so it can be exhausting. So I first tip my hat to you guys for being out here doing this, because I know what it's like. I mean, I know what the fight is like. And then we're trying to walk this tightrope that Cardon's talking about, where we're supposed to not be, what's the word, contentious, but then we step over into niceness. And so somehow we have to stand up for what's right, and at the same time, don't be a jerk about it. You know, disagree without being disagreeable. And so I constantly find myself trying to figure that out. And anyway, and we're judged by it, because if we step over a line and we do it wrong, then people, they screenshot that and they throw it on X and they say, see, Cardon, you did it wrong. Yeah. And so I think
I would love to only have 19. Only 19
for you, Cardon. For you, it's like 19 a minute.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's a vacation. 19. Oh, geez, I could have Brittany handle those. Like,
I'll just jump in here real quick on that. I think at the same time, are so many amazing, speaking from the women's perspective, women who are jumping on, they're on Instagram and other places doing the social media and showing, not necessarily getting into the deep doctrine and the scriptures, but just showing what it's like to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ. That it's a joyful thing and it's a great thing and the fruits are amazing. So I really commend those women and invite more of it. We need more insight into what it's like to be a member of the church and how amazing and wonderful it is.
Like Secret Lives of Mormon
Yeah,
Wives,
shout out
right?
Yeah,
exactly what I
maybe
was thinking
counter
of.
some of that, but I mean,
we
there's like
invite
Amy
them to live
Bascom and a lot of others who are doing some really great work, and it's not necessarily a deep dive into the doctrine, but it shows the fruits of the doctrine.
Of course,
100%.
We have this curse where we're always just thinking of the parody answer to everything, and so we just have to blurt out the joke. But no, that's some awesome stuff.
It's right here.
Yeah. So this was another question that caught our attention. It was directed towards Mike Day.
But I think everybody can add something to this.
Yeah, this is from Hollis. And they say, why does God of the Old Testament seem so different and harsher compared to God in the New Testament and the Book of Mormon and who we talk about at church?
Okay.
So Mike, what do we think about that?
Okay, I saw that earlier and I didn't know that was to me. Okay, because when I saw that earlier, because I don't know, maybe it was before we went
I didn't
live.
put
And I saw that. And I
I didn't put Dr. Michael Day, PhD.
all I saw was the question. I didn't see my name. So, and anytime I'm asked that question, I always think, okay, what is the easiest way? So I'll give you a quick example. So do you remember when, those of you that played sports, back in the day, like let's say you beat the other team by a touchdown, but then when you go to school on Monday or whatever, you say, man, we killed them, we wiped them out. We annihilated them or whatever. I on my website, Talking Scripture, I have a picture of what's called the Merneptah Stela, and it's a stone that is like glorifying the Pharaoh's military victories. And the reason why I use it when I teach Old Testament is because for years there were people that thought that Israel didn't exist, like that Israel was kind of a myth, that the Old Testament is just kind of making this up. And we triangulate by looking in the archaeological sites, other nations and how they report the ancient world. And the Egyptians actually mention Israel on this stela. And on it, this is what it reads. I'm going to read it right off the stela here. I'm not going to read the whole bit, but it says, Israel is wasted, bare of seed. And then it goes on to talk about other places that the Pharaoh has conquered. And it's kind of like the way that they would flex in the ancient world. Now, everybody knows that Israel wasn't destroyed by Egypt, but, anciently, that's how they spoke of things. And so one of the things we do, and this is to our detriment, but it's also the challenge of scripture and being on a 52-week cycle, and we go through each book in 1 year. So we do 1,200 pages of the Old Testament, and we do it in 52 weeks, but now we're doing it in 26, so it's condensed. So the book of Joshua might get like a mention. It might get a lesson. But if you take your time and you read the book of Joshua, it does say things like, we wiped them out, we destroyed them. But carefully reading it, you'll see there's lots of places where they don't wipe them out. And so a lot of this is rhetoric of how the authors are writing. And I get beat up when I say this. I've said it online sometimes, and people will say, Mike, are you an atheist? You're going against the grain of the Bible. I'm not an atheist. I'm just like, that's how we read history. And to kind of back it up, I'm out there mowing the lawn yesterday, and I was listening to the very end of Saints Volume 2 on my audiobook reader. And at the very end of Saints Volume 2, go look it up. You can listen to it. At the very end, the people that put this together for the church, they say, and I'm paraphrasing, history's messy. And what you're reading and what you're hearing isn't the whole story. And these accounts are given with a slant, and on and on and on. Well, that same thing applies to the Bible. And so when you read the book of Joshua, you kind of got to read it. I don't read it on the same level as the Book of Mormon. I know this sounds crazy, but I don't take all of that. I just don't take all of it literally. Now, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Now, this could be an hour-long podcast on your show, so I'm trying to be brief. But
we should
in the archaeological record, there's serious question about whether the conquest happened the way it was actually portrayed. I'm abbreviating here. So, in essence, I'm telling whoever asked this question, the early Christians had the same issues. And some of them said, because of the way that Jehovah or Yahweh is presented, we've got to just take the whole Tanakh. We got to take the whole Old Testament, as they called it, and just throw it out the window. And a group of Christians did that, and they're called Marcionites, followers of Marcion, and they made their own canon, which was very small. And it's because of the Marcionites that we even have a canon today. Yeah, this is the first canon where they reject the Old Testament. And if you read their writings, you understand why. And so, one of the things I'm doing in the new book that is going to be coming out is I have a whole chapter on this. But what I do is I don't approach it with answering all the questions of the harsh nature of the conquest narrative, but I show it through a temple lens. And so that there's other ways to read this stuff. So once again, we stand on the shoulders of our Protestant brothers and sisters. We're such biblical literalists, except for when we're not. And so like the whole thing in the book that Jonah has, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, about the flood narrative, most of us in church skip right over Genesis 6, 1 through 4. And we go right to the flood, and we're like super literal on the flood, but we don't know what to do with these giants walking around. But if you were to talk to 100 Latter-day Saints in your ward and say, do you believe literally in giants? I bet more than half would say, first of all, what are you talking about? Second, like, no, that sounds really weird. And so I think we just have to be careful when we approach these texts. And one of my approaches in biblical studies is to look at, okay, what do other people that lived at that time period, how did they approach these issues? How did they describe God? And when we read it that way, it helps. I hope that helps to answer the question.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Maybe it's a non-answer because, like I said, this could be an hour-long thing, but I'm just trying to we got to relax a little bit and look at it from other angles.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And I mean, from the context of Israel, they believe they're God's chosen people, right? Yahweh chose them. And so when they do something, they're going to ascribe that. It's easier for them to ascribe that to God, correct?
Yes, and we do it too.
And we'll do the same thing, right? And so I think it's important to remember that there are probably things ascribed to God in the Old Testament that are men's doing, that as they were putting this story together of their founding mythos for the Israelite people, they ascribe it to God when maybe that might not be. Maybe God didn't really say, you do this, and then they do something very harsh or violent, or what we would look at as, maybe immoral. So it's messy, though. I think that's the main thing I got from being in Mike Day's Old Testament class about a decade ago, is that the Old Testament is messy. So thanks for that. That was a good. Does anyone else have a quick 2 cents on that?
Really quick, guys, I will say this. Maybe we should do, when you guys get back from being in Japan, we could do a whole thing on this.
A deep dive. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, can I
was
jump in real quick on
make
this?
sure you like the stream and share the stream, because we have a special musical number coming up if you like and share the stream. Go on,
Andrea.
I don't know how many people are interested in hearing you sing, Jonah. Your books are great, but
it's Bort Finkelstein.
Bort. So I think this is actually
Mr.
part of the reason why Jonah's book is so important, because it does demonstrate that there are things missing from the text. And if we had those things, it might radically change our perspective on some of these stories. But I think it's also helpful when studying the Old Testament is to really zoom out and not get hung up on some of those details, because the overall theme of the Old Testament, I believe, is how God keeps working with these fallen, failing human beings who struggle, and they live in their own cultural context and have their own beliefs. And yet God keeps working with them to bring them ultimately to the promised land, that he doesn't give up on them too easily.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. Next question. We don't have to pull this one if we don't have to. This one's a Dave Butler. When is your next book coming out? People are chomping at the bit. And what is it going to be? Give a quick synopsis of what it's going to be about, Dave.
It won't surprise you if anybody's been listening to me talk about stuff. The thing that's unusual about this next book that I'm working on is I'm going to try to take the conversation to the Gentiles. So we'll see how this goes.
Cool.
Going to address this stuff without using restoration scripture at all. So we'll see how that goes. What was the question? I got like 3 words in it.
When's it coming out? And Yeah. What?
Oh,
By the way, Dave, that's really hard. Like, I gotta tip my hat to you, because writing something without using restoration text is kind of like boxing with one hand tied behind your back. It's really hard.
fortunately, I have these large hands. They're like stubby fingers. This is like punching meat, Mike.
Yeah.
It was made to box.
Hey, I got a question for you about that, Dave.
Yeah.
Is it outside the scope of like your ethics of not using restoration scripture to use apocrypha and archaeology? Because something that's blown my mind about Jonah's now multiple books on this issue is how just glaring some of these apocryphal examples are of, for example, the Great Forsakening. Like,
I will use a few. So I'll tell you, for example, Paul talks about a three-part ascension that where the top level is paradise. Paradise doesn't mean heaven. Paradise is paradisos. It's a word the Greeks borrowed from Persians. It means the garden. It's a three-level ascent where the top level is the garden. Well, interestingly enough, the Book of Jubilees, for example, in several passages explicitly refers to the Garden of Eden as the Holy of Holies. So I'm going to do a little bit of pseudepigraphical or apocryphal works. Not too much. And the reason is the same reason I don't use a ton of those in the language of Adam. And that's that so if you read Nibley back in like the 70s and 80s, you might have said, wow, like if I look in the Apocrypha, like my religion is here everywhere I look. But I don't want people to draw the wrong corollary, which is that I have to look in the Apocrypha to find my religion, that I have to look in the Apocrypha to find the temple. The point of In the Language of Adam is that the Book of Mormon is full of the temple. And the point of this next book, which is at least the working title is Theirs is the Kingdom, is that it is all over the New Testament as well.
That's awesome, because one of the wild things that me and Jonah have discovered in studying evidence on the nuns and also evangelical Protestant clergy in North America is that like only about 70% of clergy in North America actually think that like the Bible is inspired and there actually is a God. Like atheism has penetrated deeper into the sola scriptura crowd than any other sect out there. So like not atheistic appeals to archaeology, but like evidence-based and naturalistic, look at this papyri, look at this inscription, we've translated it properly. Those kind of arguments like will do super well with that crowd, shall we say. I'm looking forward to that. How much will it be? $29.99?
I mean, it'll depend how long the book is. So I would like it to be sort of the same length as In the Language of Adam.
Hardcover?
I think it'll be hardcover, and then it'll be
available where fine books are sold.
It will be available if history is any indication, wherever fine books are sold. The price, we'll see how big it is, right? It should be at least as big as In the Language of Adam.
Size matters.
Bigger, the price might be a little more, but it's going to be priced like a book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, be awesome. Cool. Sweet. Yeah.
26. Okay. Is there a question? That wasn't the question, was it?
That was a question. You answered the
question. They want to know what book you got coming down the pipe, Dave. Everybody loves your stuff, bro.
It's gonna be coming out probably early next year.
Yes.
Hopefully in the first, maybe the second quarter.
Yeah.
And then also Mike alluded to it, but Mike's about to turn in a draft for his book, working title, Echoes of Eden. We'll see if that title sticks through, but it's gonna be a heavy hitter. It's gonna be awesome. Cool. Okay. All righty. Jonah, we're going to ask you this question, and then we'll go into a musical number here. But for those who are on the stream or are just barely joining the stream, if you want to get Jonah Barnes' book for the next 24 hours, 10% off, you can use code LIVESTREAM at plainandpreciouspublishing.com, and you can get Jonah's second book, and it's epic. So that... let's move on to this next question. Jonah, how do you go about studying Genesis and the rest of the Old Testament for 2026, given all the, sorry, I don't have the given all the mistakes or things that have been taken out of the text and others, what other sources do we have at our disposal?
Oh, wow. Whew, that's a good question. Okay, so starting in January, we're going to be studying the Old Testament. I would say everybody should begin. Okay, so Latter-day Saints read the Bible, and this is in the conclusion of my book, The Lost Gems of Genesis, is that Latter-day Saints are very, very strange in how they approach the Bible, and we don't even know it. Many scholars, they look down their nose at faith. Many the doctors and lawyers, they look down their noses. They look down their monocles at faith. They think religion is silly for the peasants. And many faithful people are scared when they read the Old Testament, and they hopscotch around what they like and don't like because they know that there's skeletons in the closets. Latter-day Saints are weird because we're kind of neither and we're kind of both. We can read all the critical scholarship. And when it says there's a big hole, there's something wrong with the text, when it says those things, okay, fine. We're not scared because our entire religion is based off the glaring fact that there are definitely big problems in the Bible. So we're not scared of that. And we can still read it faithfully. And so when you open up the Old Testament this year in January, you should begin with gratitude. Every time you come across a hole, he kills Isaac, Cain's cursed for I don't know why, and there's a flood and there's giants. And whenever there's something strange, your first instinct should be, thank God that he sent a prophet to us in the latter days and that we have the church on the earth. And thank God for the Book of Mormon. That should be our first thing that we say. Other resources, actually, Talking Scripture is excellent. Plug for Mike Day. I know he makes huge money off Talking Scripture. Talking Scripture is excellent. I love Talking Scripture. But don't be afraid to dive into those things. Always stick to your tether. When you're scuba diving, when you're snorkeling without a tether, you're scared of going in the shoals. But if you have a tether, you can go places you wouldn't otherwise go. And the tether is the priesthood that's been restored on the earth. Stick to the tether. Okay. Don't let yourself get too crazy. Stick to the church. And then you can explore all kinds of things and not be afraid. We're not afraid of critical scholarship or the Apocrypha. I'd say the single greatest resource you have for studying the Old Testament is the Book of Mormon and
Amen.
The Pearl of Great Price. Pearl of Great Price. And this is what my book is about. The Pearl of Great Price solves so many of the biggest problems in the Old Testament. Before you dive into the Old Testament, please read the Pearl of Great Price, internalize it. If you have a chance to read my book or steal my book from somebody, that's totally fine. But what I try to do is answer some of those holes, those big problems, so that the rest of the Old Testament makes sense. If you get the beginning right, the rest of it makes better sense. So be grateful that we have a living prophet on earth today. That's the first feeling we should have when reading the Old Testament.
Cool.
Or phenomenal.
Oh, and to demonstrate this, actually, Brandon, to demonstrate this, I've actually composed an original song to demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about. So I don't know if it's time for the special musical number. Please like the stream.
Let's hit it. Like the stream.
And turn up
like
the volume. Dude, this was a
push play.
one-take wonder, by the way.
We're not
This was a
pushing play.
one-take wonder. I want
Like
everyone to know.
stream.
Okay, here we go. As a special treat for you all tonight, and as an olive branch to our Creedist brothers and sisters, I've decided to rewrite a beloved children's song in our church, As If We Never Had Joseph, sticking 100% completely to the Bible only and the traditional canon. So I present the infallibility of the Bible, the sufficiency of the Bible version of this song. Adam was a prophet. Wait. No, okay. Adam was a human, first one that we know, in a place called Eden. Yeah, okay. He helped things to grow. He didn't have to work. There was no toil or strife. He didn't have to change diapers till he listened to his wife. Oh, follow the canon, follow the canon, follow the canon. It never errs. Follow the canon, follow the canon, follow the canon. It's always clear. Cain brought an offering, but his prayer was not heard. Abel was important, but he never says a word. So Cain totally kills him, and now poor Cain is lost. Cursed to live off Slim Jims, Cain became Sasquatch. Oh, follow the canon, follow the canon, follow the canon. It never errs. Follow the Bible, follow the Bible, follow the Bible, 'cause it's always clear. Enoch was a prophet who somehow walked with God. Jude and James and Paul and Christ talked about him a lot, but his book was too Christian, so the Jews, they threw it out. But the Christians got the last laugh because they also threw it out? What? Follow the canon, follow the canon, follow the Bible. It never errs, because who needs a prophet when you've got the canon? Follow the canon, it's always clear. Seth was. Noah was a prophet who got real drunk one day. Ham and laughed with Shem, and Japheth walked away. So Noah was buck naked, and then he cursed his grandson. Something about a garment. What the heck is going on? Oh, follow the canon, follow the canon, follow the Bible. It never errs. Follow the canon. Who needs a prophet when you've got the Bible? 'Cause it's always clear. Abraham was really old, but somehow had a kid. When God told him to kill him, but instead he killed a kid. Oh, Esau was a baby who was born with lots of hair, but one time he got real hungry and traded it for his airship. Oh, follow the canon, follow the canon, follow the canon. It never errs. Follow the canon. Who needs a prophet when you've got the Bible? It's always clear. Jesus was a prophet who said the scribes were wrong. He said he'd never leave us, but we're so glad he's gone. Instead, we have the Bible, and we don't need anyone else, whether it be an angel or even God himself. Oh, follow the canon, follow the canon, follow the canon. It's always clear. Oh, follow the canon, follow the Bible, follow the Bible. It never errs. Oh, follow the canon, follow the canon, follow the canon. It's always clear. Follow the Bible. Who needs a prophet when you've got the Bible? 'Cause it's always clear.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Excellent.
That's so good. For those who
sometimes we don't appreciate how crazy the Bible would be if you weren't raised with Joseph. If we didn't have the Book of Mormon, the Pearl of Great Price, and the church, and we just if we had clean, it's hard for us to imagine, but the Bible is crazy. So
yeah. No, that's awesome. And really, so those who don't know, Jonah's book, The Lost Gems of Genesis, the subtitle is How the Apocrypha Proved Joseph Smith Fixed the Bible. And the whole point of this book is that the Old Testament has a lot of gaps in it, tons of gaps. And then Joseph Smith comes along right on the heels of the Book of Mormon, puts out these revelations having to do with Moses, Abraham, Enoch, and Cain, Abel, all of these characters, Seth, that get very little time in the Old Testament, and he expands on them. And then he just leaves it. And then 100 years later, all these apocryphal works start coming out of the woodwork, showing
with the same motifs
and stories of the gaps that Joseph filled into the Old Testament. And this was a wild read of a book. So let's get talking about it a little bit. I know Greg and Andrea and Cardon, I don't think you guys have gotten a copy. If you guys want to stay on the stream or if you got something else to do, but you're welcome to come on or stay on and share any 2 cents that you got. But let's just get into a little bit why people should want to read this book and what it's about.
I don't know how to kick myself off.
Yeah.
I don't use StreamYard. So I guess I'll stay if you want me to, but I don't see the button to quit.
It would make me happy to kick you off.
So Jonah, one question I have for you is obviously with the key to the keystone, it was talking about how a lot of themes in the Book of Mormon are vindicated through the Apocrypha. Why? And you're working on a third book that you may or may not already have a manuscript finished for it. But why was this subject the next step in showing how these apocryphal texts kind of vindicate the restoration in the prophet Joseph Smith?
That's a good question. In studying the Apocrypha, or studying these ancient documents, if anybody dives into them, you start banging your head into Enoch over and over and over again. He's a rash all over the ancient documents and the New Testament, by the way. All the New Testament authors are obsessed with Enoch. They talk about him and refer to him and make reference to him. So does Alma, by the way. So does Helaman, by the way. And so the natural, and people always ask about Enoch. It's kind of the trendy thing to ask about on YouTube. You see all these ancient aliens episodes, like who were the giants of Enoch and all this crazy stuff. And so, there's so much on Enoch. I just thought, well, that's got to be the next book. And then, and in my first book, there was always a question mark about Genesis, because the key to the keystone, I think, tries to argue what might have been in the original Old Testament, what might have been in the original brass plates that Lehi absconded from Jerusalem. And then we know that, okay, it didn't have, Ecclesiastes in it, but it also didn't have the Genesis that we have. It had some other version of Genesis, and we're not totally sure what was in that Genesis. And so I thought, well, I got to dive into this and figure out what's in it. Sometimes, guys, I just write stuff because I'm just really curious about it. I'm glad that y'all like it, but I'm kind of just writing it for me because I'm like, I just want to know, and it helps to organize my thoughts by writing a book. But Enoch was the natural next step. By the way, somebody in the chat keeps saying that we're grifters. Raise your hand if you have a day job. Anybody? Yeah, nice try. Thanks, Antis. But yeah, anyway, so that's why Enoch was kind of the natural next. Like, you're all a bunch of grifters. I'm like, bro, you have no idea. We all work for a living, guys. Even our clergy works for a living. My bishop has another job, which is amazing.
Yeah. Greg, I know you had a
Cardon
question
has entered the chat. Brace yourself, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
Greg,
why.
For Jonah, before you had to go.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a question. I haven't read the manuscript yet or anything, but there's a lot of research recently. I just didn't know if you might have either pulled from this or what your thoughts are on this theory. But you're pulling a lot of this information from the Apocrypha, which is great. What if the brass plates included that information? That these aren't just some separate scrolls found here and there, but that the brass plates actually have that information in there. There is some work being done right now by Noel B. Reynolds, the BYU Book of Mormon scholar, and Jeff Lindsay. And they've got 150 phrases that they've found so far that are in the Book of Moses and in nowhere else except for in the Book of Mormon. And so they're putting together something that looks like, hey, the Book of Moses may be the genesis of the brass plates. And so is there any thought like that you've been going through with this as you've gone through and pulled from the Apocrypha and whatnot? Is the brass plates full of all of this information? And could the Book of Moses be the genesis of the brass plates?
Or Finkelstein.
Did you put him up to this, Hayden? Jackson,
I
did you
did
put him up to
not.
this question?
He literally texted us and just said, "Hey, I have one question," and then I
Because
gotta
that
go.
is exactly what Lost Gems of Genesis is about. So, at the very beginning of the Lost Gems of Genesis, I float kind of an interesting theory. I think one of the reasons why the Book of Moses has similar phraseology as the Book of Mormon is because the Book of Moses may have been part of the Book of Mormon. But it's a theory, and you can see kind of why I propose that in the first chapter and make your own judgment. But yeah, so in trying to figure out what's in the genesis of the brass plates, I thought, well, there's things in the Book of Moses that are the things in the Book of Mormon that are clearly pulling from the Book of Moses. Clearly, like everybody points to choose ye this day whom you will serve in the Book of Mormon, and they say, well, that's pulling from the Book of Joshua. Actually, there is a similar phrase in the Book of Moses, and there's lots of things like that. So in trying to piece together what the brass Genesis, what the Josephite Genesis, the original, may have looked like, the Pearl of Great Price is indispensable. And so this book, at the end of The Lost Gems of Genesis, I float, here's what the original Genesis may have looked like, and try to reconstruct what would have been in it. And I lean heavily on the Pearl of Great Price and the vestiges of that Genesis found in the Book of Mormon. So that's an excellent question. That's exactly the question I try to answer in the book.
Then I'm going to buy the book.
Boom.
There we go.
Got it. We got one sale. One person's bought it so far. Good
Got
job,
one.
everybody.
Got one.
So,
Hey, thanks,
All right.
guys.
Hey,
thanks, Greg.
Take care.
We love you, bro.
Thanks, Greg.
Andrea, you had a question for Mr. Jonah.
Just one comment real quick before I head out as well. Just want to take back my earlier comment about your musical ability, Jonah. That was fabulous. Your musical skills certainly rival your writing abilities. So well done on both accounts.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, Andrea, we'll see ya. It was great talking to you.
Thanks, Andrea.
So, all right. So I got a couple questions I think can lead this with Dave, you are the editor in chief of this book, right? What was what? Did you say no?
Said uh-oh.
Oh, I was like, did you hire some like Philippines guy or something?
I am the editor in chief of the publisher, and I did indeed edit this book.
Yes. And so for you, what was one thing from Jonah's book that you felt like was like, wow, that is an interesting idea I haven't heard yet, and is worth looking into?
The book is full of those. I thought his proposal that the Book of Moses might be the Genesis that Lehi knows super interesting. I've been reading recently, working on my book about the garden accounts. I think I just talked with Greg about this maybe, but there's a Swedish scholar named Tryggve Medinger who looks at the three Genesis accounts in the Old Testament. Now those are in, the three Eden accounts. That's in Genesis, it's in Ezekiel, and it's in Job. There are two verses in Job that seem to be a reference to Adam. And one of the things it concludes is that those accounts, that none of them is the original, that they're all derived from an earlier version. And so it's super interesting that Joseph produced so much Eden material, so much Adam and Eve material. And it's interesting that seems to have been the version of that stuff that the Nephites knew circa 600 BC, right? So that's fantastic. But Greg already touched on that one. So I think some of the sort of shocking stuff is Bort's arguments around the flood, right? And sort of the combination of factors and the sort of sustained argument for, hey, it's not just any kind of wickedness. There's a combination of factors, including longevity, including the sort of a inappropriate implementation of divine knowledge, if you will, theft, right? This is the story of the fallen angels associated with the old Enoch material, is that they give human beings not technical knowledge, right? That they're not supposed to have. And debauchery with systematic bloodthirstiness. And I'm talking this way to avoid giving spoilers. I want you to go read it and see what you think for yourself. But it's I think a compelling and interesting explanation for what could have been so evil that everyone needed to be wiped out.
Yeah,
right?
the thing that scared me, because when you read in the Old Testament, right, it's just like there was so much wickedness and violence in the land, God wiped it clean, right? But you're like, okay, but what really? And then as you go through these apocryphal accounts and you're sharing the things that they were doing to deserve the full wrath of God, I was just like, oh no, I think we're doing all of them. That was the thing that was surprising, is how many modern that I thought were new sins, that I thought were unique to our day and time, were so specifically related to the sins and wickedness of the people at the time of Noah. That was a chapter. I think that's your 4th chapter or something like that. That was just like mind blowing. I couldn't stop reading.
Yeah.
Really good.
And by the way, Jonah's explanation is a story that also answers the question, what about the children? Why? And by the way, the answers here, I will give a spoiler, is there were no children.
There were no children. They stopped that.
There were no children, and that maybe is part of the problem. But the overall, the interesting meta phenomenon, the thing that's happening again and again in these stories, it isn't necessarily, oh, look, here are these things, and now we know the secret history that happened that was taken out of the Bible, right? That might be true. The interesting thing is, oh, look, Joseph has given us a story or a name or a repeated trope or motif, and he did it in 1830 or 1831, right? And then it subsequently turned out that that's actually a very old ancient motif or story in many, many ancient books, none of which was available to Joseph in 1830 and 1831, right? So the astonishing thing is not that necessarily even any of these things happened. That they may be true. That's not the point. The point is that there are these old, valid stories that are part of the Israelite tradition that somehow Joseph very confidently walks on the stage off the farm, gives them all to us, dies before really any of them gets corroborated, and then what Jonah's documenting is the systematic corroboration of story after story after story, even down to the details of specific names or just little. Man, here's another one. There's this fantastic point Jonah makes about the Book of Moses, where Jonah, correct me if I get this wrong, but they're the Adamite, the people of Adam, begin to refer to Jesus Christ, but they don't do it initially, right? They only do it basically after Adam is dead, which is an unremarkable, just funny little detail, right? But there are apocryphal stories in which that same detail is given a larger framework, and the larger framework is when Adam is dying, Eve and Seth go back to the Eden to ask for help, to ask for oil or leaves from the tree of life to restore Adam, and they're not given the oil or the trees or the leaves. They're told about Jesus Christ, right? And so just this tiniest little detail, right? The name Jesus Christ does appear among the Adamites only after Adam is dead, is consistent with this story in the Apocrypha, right? It's fantastic, and there are just dozens of these.
Yeah, no,
and
awesome.
I just want to say thank you for understanding. I'm not trying to figure out how tall the giants were, or when Pangea happened, or recreate the ark. Or that's not the point. The point is, how could Joseph know? That's the point. Whether it happened, like, oh, so you're saying it's a global flood? I'm not saying anything, man. I'm just saying it's impossible that Joseph could have known these things. And that's the crux of it. I don't have to care if it was a global flood or if the giants were this tall or that tall. I don't have to care,
right?
Because I have the comfort of knowing this really was a restoration. God really did return in the latter days.
Right.
And that's
Jonah, one of the things I like about your book, Jonah, one of the things I like about your book, I'm kind of just going through the Enoch chapter because, like I said, when I read this, not all the pages lined up or whatever, but I love how you show the receipts. That's the new phrase I'm hearing out there on the internet. You're saying, here's what's happening in Joseph's stuff in the Pearl of Great Price. Here's what the Enoch texts are saying, and you parallel them and you show them. And so I think for people that are interested in, coming to understand this, sometimes it helps to do that. And then, like I said, I kind of wrote this in the forward. I'm a footnote guy, and I like to chase the footnotes. But there's enough eye candy in here to go and spend. I mean, I can't even imagine how many hours you put into this, chasing down these sources and footnoting and cataloging everything. But to the haters, and I'm reading the chat, and I'm sitting here commenting on the chat while I'm listening, and I'm kind of I'm doing the modern day internet thing where we're doing 19 things at once. But there's some haters out there that are coming at you saying, you're just out to make money, and but then this person's also saying, but give me your research for free. In defense of authors, when you are doing this kind of work, this isn't just a one and done thing. I write, and as many of you know, and many of you do, this is hard work, putting this together, doing this work. And I mean, you're showing and you're giving it, and here's your sources. And anyway, I'm such a fan of how you presented the information. You're putting it here. It's very accessible. And by the way, what I love about this, because when I first got into the Enoch literature, and I'm dating myself, but this is before the internet, and I had to go to get the card catalog and go to the library and check it out and go read it and then photocopy it and highlight it. All this stuff's on the internet now, so it's not like it's hard to find, and you can source this stuff. As an aside, one thing I want to say besides propping you on how you put the parallels there and you show your receipts, I want to just echo what you said about the Book of Enoch. There's a website out there that shows how many times the Book of Enoch is quoted in the New Testament, and it's insane. The New Testament authors were in love with the Enoch literature. They were in love with this stuff, and it's nowhere in our in the Old Testament. Clearly, it mattered to these New Testament guys. So I just want to make this plug. Like, don't just take Enoch and just go, oh, Jonah's up in the night. No, if you are a fan of Jesus of Nazareth, if you read the Bible, you're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and you love Jesus, you might want to take the Book of Enoch seriously, because the New Testament authors that you love, they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to go along with how much
100%, yes. And I left a lot of bread overproofing in my proofer because I was chasing down these sources. I lost a lot of sourdough to make these sources tight for y'all. All right.
Thank you.
Chase them down.
Thank you. This is not easy what you're doing, putting this all together.
No, there's 25 pages of sources at the end of the book. And then in the Dramatis Libri, like all the apocryphal books in which you pull from, there's over 46 different obscure texts that, and this is a question, and there might be a long answer to it, but where is like the place that you go to read all these different texts? Are you having to go to the deep corners of the internet to actual physical libraries, or where are you pulling? You have to get on the dark web.
A lot of this stuff's really easy to find on like ancientwritings.com, but you know what? Maybe on this stream here, I'll plug some sites where you can. This is not hard to find. That's just because maybe I'm a nerd and I read this stuff. But anyway, you guys keep talking, and I'll plug some stuff in here in the chat.
Yeah. What about you, Bort?
Well, Cade knows all about the dark web, right? Cade, dark. You can find everything. He's one of the youths. He's one of the youths on the interwebs.
Jonah's telling me he just asked AI. He just said, "Hey, I have this preconceived argument that I want to make. Can you just give me a bunch of sources that I can just use?" Yeah.
That sounds fun. Cade, for you,
Cade's thinking, being an author isn't that hard. Do people know about ChatGPT?
So me and Jackson have been hanging out with these nerds for like a while now. It's been like, and so we've heard a lot of this stuff before. You were the first person to read the manuscript outside of our little weird circle of friends. What were some of the things that stuck out to you as you read it? What were things you liked about this book and felt like it added to you?
As a lawyer, were you offended as a lawyer?
I was offended. So I think the way that Jonah presents this information is very, very clear. And basically the whole crux of the book is that if Joseph was just making all this up, then that it aligns with these ancient texts in ways that are somewhat surprising. And that's how that's how a lot of like historical arguments or even philosophical arguments will work. Like Jonah, it does a very good job of saying that this isn't likely that Joseph would have known to include this aspect, known to expand upon the Enoch story by pages and pages, but he did, and it makes for really, really compelling reading. And it almost made me think it wasn't written entirely by AI. Like, it almost convinced me.
Yeah, ChatGPT 5 is definitely, it's really good now. You can write in the voice of Jonah. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Cade.
Dude, I'll just share real quick. One of the most intriguing parts of the book for me was when you extrapolated on what it actually meant when it says in the Bible that Cain killed Abel to get gain. And because if we're being honest and we just read the King James version of Cain killing Abel and their offerings and stuff, it's like, whack. What's going on here? Like he was a farmer. He sacrificed his grain.
They were never commanded how to make sacrifices yet. They were just winging it, and God's like, eh.
Yeah, I'm gonna reject you forever, and then.
Well, I love quoting, and I'm just realizing now that I'm on the stream with 2 lawyers and a doctor. I'm just realizing this. But I spend a lot of time talking about what people have thought. And this is actually really fun. Find a weird verse in the Bible and then just go Google and try to figure out what have Bible scholars thought this meant. And it is wild what they, why did God curse Cain? Or why did he reject Cain's offering? You get all kinds of crazy answers. One of my favorites is because he was a farmer, and farming is lazy, and God hates laziness. And so he rejected this offering. And I'm like, and this is by some, real, like a theologian, a guy with a PhD in an ivory tower. And he's like, oh, yes, well, of course it's this. And it's like, man, you people don't have a clue what you're talking about. 1 ounce of Joseph is worth 10,000 pounds of scholarship. The guy with just a flourish of his hand, and he demolishes so much of this crazy speculation. But yeah, Cain is just an example, and that's one story I wanted to focus on, because if you really read it honestly, and atheists do, they look at it and they say, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Why is God, rejecting the sacrifice of his grandson so capriciously? It seems really harsh. Isaac Asimov said, and I quote him in the book, that the greatest creator of atheists, the thing that creates more atheists, is the Bible, is an honest reading of the Bible. And we're spoiled because we have Joseph. And so I'm trying to bring out, here's some of the things, the gems that Joseph gave us so that we don't have to be weirded out or freaked out like many of our Christian brothers and sisters were when they became atheists from reading the Bible. So It's a great question.
Yeah. No, I think it's awesome. And, it's not that, because people who aren't familiar with the Pearl of Great Price that may watch this or whatever, they might read it. It's not that any of the weirdness of the Bible is completely resolved by the Pearl of Great Price, but it provides a context to these stories. If anything, it fills in gaps where maybe the story is still a little unusual compared to the way that we tell stories now or the way that we look at history, but it makes far more sense. And just the fact that you're finding the same sort of connections in these apocryphal texts, that although we don't know the authors, and a lot of people that read your work and criticize it, like with Key to the Keystone, they don't actually understand what your point is. A lot of times they're like, well, we know that these apocryphal texts don't go back to 600 BC because look we dated these ones and they're, in 400.
Who cares? Why does it say the same thing, bro?
Yeah, why does the thing is, you can't date ideas. You can't date stories. And just because there aren't any existing stories that have been found in the wide sands of the Middle East that date to this sort of time. The question still needs to be made, where do these ideas come from? Because before ideas were written down, anciently, they were probably talked about far longer before they actually made it to papyrus or to paper or to whatever. You know what I mean?
Yes, and this is really useful for understanding the Book of Mormon. That, and Dave and Mike know this better than I do. But by the time the Book of Mormon or the brass plates were taken from Jerusalem, there were schools of thought. It isn't just Isaiah himself lived 200 years or Zechariah. People, they always get picky. They say, well, the book of Zechariah wasn't written until 100 years after Zechariah was dead. And you're like, yeah, okay, well, fine. But there was a school of Amos and of Jeremiah and of Isaiah, and these traditions may have had a following and people who passed them down. I mean, look at Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Jesus Christ
100%.
had 12 guys in his original class, and now he's got billions and billions of them. And so these traditions are passed down. And by the time they might be put in paper that we discover, it might be 200 years after they were begun. And so, don't get too tripped up on dates. Don't get too, because man, dates change, man. They change. Estimates change. And I go over some of these in the introduction of the book. One is quite an interesting dating mistake that many of the scholars made. And it's just karma. When you disagree with Joseph, man, karma's coming for you.
Jonah, one of the things I appreciate in your book is you do deal with, okay, what kind of access did Joseph have to this stuff, in 1829, in 1830, in 1831? I mean, we just have to sit and pause and appreciate a couple of things. The time he lived in, and then the age when he's putting this out. And then I can't remember because my brain is muddled. I can't remember if it's this book or the last book, but I think it's this book where you say he just kind of takes Abraham and sticks it up on the shelf. And then at 38, he's dead. And then later they tell the world, I think it becomes canon later. I think you address that in your book. But my point is, it's not like Joseph Smith had access to the internet and JSTOR and a library access to all the scholarship. Oh, and time to learn the languages, to read the stuff that hadn't been translated yet. And, to get on a jet and go to the tombs and the places where this stuff was held, dust it off like Gandalf, blow it off and read the prophecy from the third age. It's not like he had access. He's in his 20s trying to live his life, and he's just putting this out there. And so I think sometimes we just have to appreciate that. And I would ask the haters out there, what were you doing at 27, at 23? What kind of stuff were, I mean, and so I forget the guy who said this, but some guy who's not a member of our faith, but he's a deep thinker, just basically waved the white flag and said, without acknowledging his prophetic mantle, just said, Joseph Smith is a religious genius. Maybe Dave can remember the guy who did that. I was having a conversation the other day with a more learned man than I.
Harold
there
Bloom,
it is. Harold Bloom. He's just a religious genius. And you know what? You got to give him that. If you're going to say he's not a prophet, you got to give him that, because the stuff that he's doing, I mean, and you're showing the receipts in your book. So that's what I appreciate about what you're doing, is because it's one thing to talk about it on the internet. It's another thing to say, bro, here it is, and scoreboard, deal with it.
Yeah, no, that's
I had
awesome.
no idea Orlando Bloom said that about the Book of Mormon. That's really awesome to have it.
Crazy. In the Lord of the Rings, it's in the extended footage.
No, one of my favorite Gentile mentions, though, is that's about circa 2005, maybe. One of the New York, it was like the Sunday Time, the New York Times Sunday magazine or something like that, had this feature where they'd interview famous people and say, what's a book on your shelves people wouldn't expect? And Freeman Dyson, who was I think a Nobel Prize winning physicist and also just a fantastic writer. He wrote Infinite in All Directions, for example, about kind of the nature of the universe. He said, the Book of Mormon, he said, it's really good. It's not what you think it is. That was basically the whole thing, right? And it ran in, again, I think it was like the New York Times or New York Magazine or something on a weekend. Pretty fantastic.
Interesting. That's cool.
And I agree with him. It's really good. It's not what you think it is.
It's not what you think it is.
It's not what you think.
Yeah. Dude, if there's one thing we learned on the Stick of Joseph since we started this channel, is the Book of Mormon was not what we thought it was. And I just feel like every layer that we pull apart just reveals another trove of treasure. And This is awesome. And the thing that I love about your books, Jonah, is you're stepping out into the unknown. And a lot of times people get so scared. And this is, and you know, Mike can attest to this. He talks about it all the time about how a lot of times academics, they want to be on stable footing, both feet on stable footing all the time. The problem with that, though, is that you're never going to discover anything new. You're never going to find any new gems. And so, yes, you're stepping on, you know, some shaky ground in some points, but you're presenting ideas that will inspire people to step out. And I think any ground that is considered shaky in any of your books over time, and already I have felt this way, are just becoming more and more sturdy. And the ground that you're pushing out on is just the ground that Joseph Smith laid 200 years ago. It's not like any of these ideas really are Jonah Barnes's ideas. You're putting forth Joseph Smith ideas. It's not like any of these ideas. And you're seeing that they are becoming vindicated over time. And I think we need to have more conversations like this.
Yeah, so a lot of scholars, when they go on a YouTube podcast, will have a shelf behind them showing all the books that they've read.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have my shelf here behind me. I don't know if you guys can see this. So I have the Book of Mormon, and then I have the Book of Mormon, and then I have the Book of Mormon. Here I have the Book of Mormon. Here I actually have the Book of Mormon. This is a copy of the Book of Mormon. This is another copy of the Book of Mormon, and this is another copy of the Book of Mormon. If people, you know, look, I want to sell books. Sure, that's great. But this is actually the book that I hope you guys all read.
That you're selling.
This is actually the book that I hope you guys read.
Book of Mormon.
This book. It's just the Book of Mormon in a different cover, really. Actually, that's all it is. No, but this book right here, you know, was read a 17-year-old boy. That's the same age as Cade, actually, right here. A 17-year-old boy back in 1844 was standing on in the plaza in Hull, England, and bought a book off of a guy and it was the first book this guy had ever sold, and it was a copy of the Book of Mormon. And 200 years later, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because the 17-year-old kid used a little bit of his money and took a chance on this book, and it ended up taking him across the whole world. He lost family along the way. He buried children. His little girl died at the foot of Big Mountain. An 11-year-old daughter died at the foot of Big Mountain right before he reached Zion. And these sacrifices that he made, all because of a book, because of this book. And so it's a dangerous book, and people are scared of it, and they should be, because it's a dangerous book that threatens to change your life forever. And so if you can't afford my book, fine, that's great. This will send 2 young men to your house. They'll give it to you for free. This is really the book that I want everybody to read, is the Book of Mormon. This is my shelf that I brag. Look at all my books that I've read. They're all the same book.
Dude, that I don't even want to add anything else. That's a good
I'm so
end.
pumped. I'm so pumped up right now.
I can't wait to
get out of here.
I'm so sick of being in the Marine Corps. I want to hang out with you guys all day. No, but we love you guys. Jonah, that was a great end. I think I'm not going to add anything else other than if you want to read Jonah's book, you can get it. Lost Gems of Genesis for the next 24 hours. We'll give a discount code. So
can I ask a question?
Yes.
When can we get or expect, Jonah, the companion book to explain the generational slang? Like, I don't know what Adam's drip is. I'm still wrapping my brain around Chad and Giga Chad. I feel like I sit before you like a child with a cup and say,
Mike.
Master, can I have some porridge?
All of this is out. Everything all that slang is out. I need to actually, maybe I can work with it. We can do an updated and expanded version, and we can go through and revise it and make it a little more adapted to the times.
Jade's going to consult on my 3rd book.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's just like it's a few months gone is the only problem.
Oh man, that's awesome. Okay, well,
so buy your copy now, quick, before it goes out of date.
Before the slang changes.
It's unreadable.
Okay, cool. Well, we love all you guys that are watching. We've had a lot of people watching. It's great. And until next time, stay curious and hungry. Click the link in the description and get Jonah's book. It's phenomenal. All right, you can end it, Brando.
Are we off the live stream now?